What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the Russia versus Belgium game in the Euros 2021, and we're going to be continuing that theme for the rest of the month. So before we start, please check out my book. It's on Amazon, it's online, and I think if you like tactics, you'll really enjoy it. But before we get into the tactical part of the video, it has to be said that bigger things are happening right now, so just send your best wishes, support to Christian Eriksen and his family, but also be respectful. Don't be reposting the video of what happened. It's not easy for a family like that to go through what they're going through in a time like this and then be under the microscope. So all the support goes to him and his family, and be as respectful as possible. But let's get back into the video and look at how Belgium played. So from the first third of the field, they had a really interesting build-up shape using their goalkeeper creating a three-man build-up, but their most central defender jumped into a more holding midfield position and allowed the double pivot to occupy a bit higher up the field. So this created a 3-3 build-up structure that had a staggered midfield with a holding midfielder and then the two double pivot players. They occupied a higher role, and this gave them solid numerical superiority against the Russian two center forwards. So then from here, we had our narrow front three occupying the half space and the central corridor of Romelu Lukaku, and now our wingbacks, they occupied a bit deeper role than usual, but they had so much space because of the high volume of players in the central three corridors. They almost completely vacated the wide areas and had free progression in this area. Now, Russia tried to combat this with a 4-4-2, and then in the second half we see them shift their structure with a few different personnel changes and some different dynamics in the second half, and they at times played with a back five in the second half, but in the first half it was primarily a 4-4-2, and Belgium found it quite easy to control the game offensively and defensively playing against this Russian 4-4-2. So again, another picture here of the Belgian buildup, and now we start to see some of the staggering and asymmetries within the Belgian side. So with Belgium playing these double pivots and having the most central defender occupy a typical holding midfield role, allowed the other two central midfielders to then stagger themselves and occupy the space asymmetrically, and then asking more questions of the defense. As well as the front three, they often played in varying widths and had a bit of fluidity. So as long as the three central corridors were occupied, these players had a lot of freedom to move in and work off of each other to create pinning and different dynamics on each side. So as we see down here on the Belgian left side or the Russian right side, it is very vacated by Belgium, whereas one side we have a little bit of an overload in the right half space or left half space, depending on which point of view you're looking at it from. But this occupies enough Russian defenders to where they can't shift adequately over to one side, and it almost separates the Russian defense, thus creating space in key areas. So as we see here, the Russian side being split into two structures, vacating the central area, but also giving Belgium wide areas as well to progress through, which made it very hard for them, especially in the first half, to keep up with the Belgian attack. Now the last picture of the Belgian build-up, we have our same initial build-up structure with our initial diamond using the goalkeeper and the most central defender jumping into a higher area, our staggering of our double pivot, and then our narrow front three occupying the central corridor. And now this is a very good example on how we can create rondo situations in the first third of the field and how we have press resistant structures spanning from the half space, central corridor, and wide area. So as we see here, I'll highlight it in yellow. If the ball is with the right central defender, we then have a first line passing option to the most central defender or holding midfielder. Then we have our third line passing option to our right central midfielder, part of the natural double pivot. And then we have our second line passing option around the defensive block in the wide area via our wingback. And then this creates interesting dynamics as well, because we also have another third line passing option higher up the field with our inverted winger, and then Romelu Lukaku pinning the back line. So we actually have two third line passing options and this makes it very easy to create up, back, through motions of the third man movements and different concepts like this. Then when we move into the midfield third, as the Belgian team takes the ball in possession again, they go with a much more narrow central structure with their 3-2 build-up shape of their double pivot. But then it's not uncommon for then the Belgian players or the double pivot to move into wider areas, then create space and get on the ball, as it did become very compact in the central areas. Then with the three attacking players occupying the space in between the lines, this made the 4-4-2 or the 5-3-2, depending on which half we're in, of Russia. This made it very narrow, both vertically and horizontally, which then allowed Belgium to use the full width of the field for easy progression and kind of as a fail-safe if nothing else was on. But the wide areas did become very important with the movement of positional interchanges, both horizontally and vertically. So sometimes our attacking midfielders would move into wider areas, and then our wingbacks would move more narrow, making runs in behind, or we could use dual width with the wider player, attacking midfielder moving into wide areas, and then even underlapping runs from a holding midfielder or advancing central defender. Again, another picture of Belgium's 3-2 build-up shape, and now we're going to talk a little bit more about the wide rotations. So as we see here, on one side we're using dual width of the Belgian side, and on this weak side now with the ball circulating from right to left, looking at the Belgian point of view, we have dual width and staggering of the wide players moving more narrow, and Romelu Lukaku favoring one side to try and pin the defense. But from here, it wouldn't be uncommon for the winger to move into this wider area and then drop deeper, check back towards the ball, try and drag out the fullback, and then allow the wingback of Belgium to create this vertical positional interchange and make the run in behind to take advantage of a jumping defender of Russia. And this is just one simple interchange between two players, as they use a lot of movement in the wide areas, and I think this is going to be a key part of Belgium's team if they continue to improve every game and go further in the tournament. Now, Belgium out of possession, they went with their back five still, creating a +1 numerical superiority in their last line of defense, with their wingbacks looking to occupy the wide areas and being held to their position slightly by the narrow midfielders of Russia when Russia was in possession, but their 5-4-1 or 5-2-3, depending on their stage of their press or their mid to low block. What Belgium played in their 5-2-3 or 5-4-1, depending on the height of their block. But this made it very hard for Russia to get between the lines, and oftentimes they didn't even occupy these very crucial attacking spaces. As we see here, we have no Russia players, virtually no Russian players between the lines of the Belgian side. All the occupation of the Russian players came outside of the Belgian block, which made it easier to defend because they had to defend in less valuable areas, and it made it easier on the Belgian defenders to control this dangerous space in between their lines and in their defensive block. So here we are again with the 5-4-1 of Belgium. And now one thing I really like about the 5-4-1 is when a midfielder goes to jump, an outside midfielder, and now this can cause a chain reaction of the other four midfielders to jump with this player to maintain vertical compactness. But when doing so, having three central defenders or wingbacks, if players check into the space between the lines, then a central defender can have more likelihood to then go follow these players between the lines and not let these players go unmarked. So in terms of keeping vertical compactness, a 5-4-1 can be very beneficial because of the freedom the central defenders have to go and jump into these positions, especially against a Russian side whose buildup wasn't as complex or well drilled as maybe an Italian side would be, as we saw yesterday. But that's the analysis, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something from it. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.